Welcome to Real Shame. It's a twice a week show where we talk about movies from our list of shame, hence the name Real Shame, or movie blind spots. I'm Adam.
I'm Andy.
And earlier in the week, we were talking about 2009's 2012. I like saying that. I don't know why. And now we're going to follow that up with another disaster movie. And that disaster movie is?
Earthquake.
And this is a movie that I haven't seen, but you've seen.
I've seen. I actually seen quite recent, not just for watching it for this show, but I saw it probably within the last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's get into Earthquake. So Earthquake came out in 1974. It's directed by Mark Robson, and it's written by George Fox and The Godfather's own Mario Puzo.
Mm-hmm. I was surprised to see that.
Yeah, me too. Wow. Me too. When I was looking it up.
Okay.
So this follows an earthquake that happens in Los Angeles, even though I don't think it's set in the movie. And it follows a bunch of different cast of characters. You have Walter Matthau as a drunk in a bar, but mostly you're following Charlton Heston as he plays I wrote an executive, but according to IMDb, he's a construction engineer. But he seemed to be like high up in the office.
Oh, he definitely has conversations with Lauren Green about designs and stuff.
True. And he's at a construction company, and then Ava Gardner is his wife. And you just have a whole bunch of other cast of characters. You have a weird store clerk dude.
That's Marjo Gortner to you, store clerk dude.
I think the problem is like I don't know a lot of these actors or actresses.
Oh, you will.
Oh, I will. So Kirby's here to give us a little running commentary of the movie. So I think I was kind of lost, and it's hard to place a bunch of people. But
I think you hit the high notes. You missed George Kennedy.
George, I don't know.
Overzealous cop George Kennedy.
Okay, yeah. So there's two versions of the movie out, right? To my knowledge, maybe more.
Yeah.
And so what version did you watch, and what'd you think of it? And then I'll say what version I watched and what I thought of it.
All right, so there was a theatrical version that they released in theaters, and then when this played on television, what they would do for you youngsters out there back in the 70s and also in the 80s, they would take a lot of additional footage and things that had been cut from movies when they played movies on TV and make them even longer, and sometimes they would spread over 2 nights and almost be like a mini-series type thing. They did that with Superman, which the original Superman Christopher Reeve movie, cool. And actually they just put that out on Blu-ray, like the full-length kind of TV version. But the problem with some of these things is that you get a lot of stuff that probably should have been cut.
Yeah.
So what they did for Earthquake, this was no exception. They spread it over 2 nights, and I think they included some additional footage that had been cut, but they filmed some new footage that was kind of just inserted in there. And the new footage consists of, there's a newly married couple that are flying to Los Angeles. You didn't see any of this because it wasn't in your version.
No, I watched the theatrical cut.
Yeah, I watched the TV version because I've seen the theatrical, but not the TV, and I wanted to see kind of the footage that I had never seen before. But there's a couple that is flying to Los Angeles. The guy is a architect or engineer or whatever. That he's going to interview with Charlton Heston's company.
Oh, gotcha.
And he's in fact reading like World Engineering Magazine, and Charlton Heston's mug is plastered right on the cover. Yeah. So you're like, okay, he's going to go work with him.
But Charlton Heston does get promoted in the movie.
He does.
So maybe he's not.
This guy and his wife are like about to land in Los Angeles, and the earthquake happens. So they basically hit down on the runway as it starts breaking up.
Oh,
so cool. The air traffic controller is like, "You gotta go, get out of here." So they lift off again, and then they kind of circle around, and he talks about, well, when this earthquake is all over, I want to go back there and I want to help those people. I'm going to help them. So you get this additional footage, despite the fact that it was not originally shot for the movie. I actually felt like it fit, and it's not. There's not so much of it that you're like, oh god, this is tedious. I mean, it just kind of cuts to them every once in a while.
Cool.
And when they land at the airport, it's actually some decent practical effects or whatever. So I didn't really feel like it was out of place. And had I never seen the TV version and thought that the TV version was the theatrical, I don't think I would have noticed any difference. I'd be like, hey, that doesn't belong there. So, but that's the version I watched. TV.
Gotcha.
You watched the theatrical.
Watched the theatrical. Didn't know which one to choose, but apparently theatrical cut has blood that was cut from the original. Although it looks like it was added in post.
It was. It was.
Describe it, Adam.
It looked like
so that's not in the TV version.
It looked like someone drew on the celluloid like little red blood splatters.
It's cartoon.
I think it
blood,
zoomed in. I think it was when they were dying in the elevator.
Yes, that is exactly when it is. So we were actually just looking at that before we started filming today. And apparently, and again, that was not in the TV version.
Yeah.
I guess it was too much, too
gory.
Even
though it's
not
cartoon. It's
well, the
cartoonish.
elevator scene is in the movie, but it's just you don't see the cartoon blood come out. But apparently, they spent a lot of time shooting that scene, trying to make it look realistic, and they just were unsatisfied with the results.
So they just drew
so finally, they made a decision. They were just like, you know what? We'll just animate this blood. So they've got this animated. But I remember it. I mean, I remember the blood from watching it because I've seen it recently, the theatrical, and I was like, that looks stupid.
And
what am I watching, like Batman or something? Like the 60s Batman?
And that was my biggest question was like audiences that saw it in the theater, like did that look realistic to them?
Oh, I doubt it.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Adam,
even back then.
They were blind back then. I mean, like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It is, but like if we take like computer graphics, right? If we look at like Mortal Kombat, right? The computer graphics nowadays looks terrible,
good,
right? But back then, like, I don't remember being like, those graphics, I'm talking about the first Mortal Kombat, the second one, it's terrible. But, it's like, those graphics in the first Mortal Kombat look terrible. I remember them being, like, pretty cool and pretty interesting. So, like, I didn't know if that same thing applies to the fake
like
blood splatter.
They still would have been like, what's the deal with this animated stuff? Like, because it's just very out of place.
Yeah, it was.
And they could have, like, you could basically do, like, matte painting, like, the reverse of that, as opposed to, like, it looked like it was from, like, School of Rock.
Yeah,
it looked pretty.
Because even there's
out of place.
So and we can get into like the practical effects and stuff, but even there's parts where you can definitely tell it's little models and little miniatures and stuff. And yes, I could tell that, but I'm sure they were much more impressed with that back in the day than they were with cartoon blood.
I still think it looks.
I
still think it looks good. Yeah.
And we talked about this before. I love practical effects, even if they look maybe cheesy at times.
Yeah,
which
like
they certainly do in this movie.
Like when they're trying to go through the build or go down the stairwell in the building and it's like 4 stories. Like that's obviously a map painting when it zooms out, but it looks pretty good.
Looks fine. So let me ask
I think some of this miniature stuff doesn't hold up as well, like with that stupid mission church with the bells that kept on ringing and crumbling. Like that, they kept on cutting to that, and I felt like that looked
I love the guy when one character that Charlton Heston is sort of having an affair with. There's no real bones. We're not going to beat around the bush there. Genevieve Bujold is her name, or the actress's name. I love when she's running around looking for her child, and the guy is on the balcony with some like fried chicken and a beer, and he's just like, "Hey!" And then the balcony just falls, with his like fried chicken and his beer. I thought that was great.
And his house is made out of like cardboard. It just disintegrates.
Just disintegrate. Everybody's house.
All those houses were so cardboard.
The minute it tips over, it splits in half, and balsa wood just falls everywhere.
Before we get too
like
far,
every death ever in this movie.
Before we get too far though into like the plot and kind of what happens, did the theatrical version? Because I don't remember. Did the theatrical version have like a prologue almost before the credits, where a guy explains like these faults? One is moving this way and one is moving that way or whatever.
So,
No, I don't remember it. I remember it.
They have that at least in the TV version where they do talk about their east of Los Angeles.
Because I think
the faults are east of Los Angeles or something like that.
This movie opens up with the guy at the dam going in to like do a repair.
Yeah, well, that's the first scene.
But I don't remember. The only prologue I remember is the this movie's in the surround. Sin Surround.
Sin Surround.
That's the only thing I remember. So
I think I remember there being like, we were in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
1964, whatever. Like, I think
That's
I
in the
remember,
TV
like,
version. I couldn't remember if it was in the
We'll have
theatrical version.
to
or not.
go back.
But yeah,
and
so
check.
there's
It's
like
National
there's like a
Geographic,
narrator guy who just very quickly runs
I
down
don't remember.
what the faults are and why there's earthquakes. Basically,
Yeah.
you know, if one is moving in one direction, one's moving the other direction, and they're causing friction, and it causes whatever,
the
blah blah blah.
plates around the world and they cause friction.
Well, because there's parts where they're hooked, so they
Yeah.
can't move, and so that causes the earthquakes or whatever. But as long as there's like a rift there, they can smoothly slide past each other.
Yeah.
I'm talking like I'm some science guy. Like I don't know. Him saying that was like I was like, oh, that's interesting.
You're true
I didn't
tale,
know
as
that
you're
or
for.
whatever. But he very quickly, I mean, we're talking like 45 seconds maybe, runs down why earthquakes happen, and he does kind of mention that the faults are east or west or something of Los Angeles, whatever it is.
I don't remember any
East,
of that.
I guess.
So I don't know.
Well, okay, so the main character is Charlton Heston.
Yes.
He's an engineer guy. He's married to Ava Gardner, who looks terrible. And Ava Gardner was such a beauty
She looks so old.
when she was younger.
I meant, well, she's probably not with us anymore, but she looks,
She's not. Yeah.
but she looks like she should be married to her dad character.
So she's only 7 years younger than her dad, Lord Green.
And apparently she's only a year older than Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
I love his workout machine in his
Yeah.
room. Like that thing looks awesome.
When it first started and he was working out and it looked like he was doing some like Adam just started laughing and then like Ava Gardner says like the first like line, which is "Gee, dang it," and he just lost it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Opening line is,
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, God, what a way to open the movie.
Yeah.
She's pissed. And
She's pissed.
her acting, and again, Ava Gardner, she's a very beautiful woman when she was younger. She doesn't look so hot in this movie.
No.
And I think that's age and also just kind of the way that they made her up.
He should
And
have let her.
she's a better actress than she is in Earthquake.
He
'Cause
should
in
have let her
Earthquake,
get
she's pretty
swept
bad.
away by the water. Should have just gone.
Yeah. So we'll get to that, but yeah, I find it funny that her dad is played by Lord Green because they're pretty comparable in age. Like I said, she's only 7 years younger than he is.
I mean, it's not like that's like completely out of the realm of possibility because, like with Indiana Jones, Sean Connery wasn't old enough to be Harrison Ford's
Yeah,
dad.
That's true, but in this movie, they look the same
Yeah,
age.
no,
It's like there's no way Ava Gardner is his
agree.
daughter. Like they both look old as
Yeah.
hell.
when the secretary goes, "Oh, your daughter's on the line," and it cuts to her, we were like, "What?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because I'd seen it before, but just not having.
Right.
But also, her faking her suicide in like the morning.
Yeah, it's so laughable.
She
so bad.
was she's like
And Charlton Heston's just
worst part of the
pissed.
movie,
He's just like, oh, you know the routine. Get over here. And hangs up. He just wants the doctor to come and take care of her.
And then earthquake happens. She's like, "Oh."
Yes.
Her eyes, like, dart
it's-
open.
It's awful. But he's cheating on her with Genevieve Bujold.
Well, he hadn't physically cheated until that day.
Yeah,
Andy.
that's true. But
was
but
just
he's
an emotional
definitely
connection.
okay. But he's definitely thinking about. They're definitely doing something
And
behind.
she's like running around in like her robe and stuff, which is just
Andy,
like weird.
I had never seen Adam more disturbed about a woman who was covered from neck to the ankle. He goes, "What is type of? Why is she wearing a robe? That's
She's
so
wearing a robe.
inappropriate."
She's like entertaining some random guy, not some random guy, but her friend in a robe. It's like
yeah, but you. I mean, you know at that point that they're kind of, or at least I kind of suspected like, oh, he's doing something.
But she's like, isn't she like the worst mother? Because she
No,
just
no,
like
up
wants
and
to,
up.
she wants to go out carousing the town. She like goes, go do whatever you want to do, Johnny, or whatever her son's name. She's like, I'm gonna go get some.
Yeah, but in the 70s,
That's
back
just the way it
then,
was.
you let your kids run wild like that. That you had.
And then what happens to them?
It's okay.
They fall down like some ravine
okay.
and they almost get killed.
There's all kinds of stuff that happens in this movie. But I think it's funny that Charlton Heston is like an ex-football player. It doesn't really say if he played. I don't think he played professionally, but maybe he did.
At USC with
He played with Frank Gifford. I do
yeah.
remember that. Okay, so he played collegiately, but he didn't play for the NFL.
And he
or
signed a football to give
anything
it
like
to
that. So he signs a football to give to Genevieve Bujold's son. And then rounding out the cast, we've got George Kennedy as the crazy cop who hates the world. As you mentioned,
he
Walter
plays he looks like a cop. Like he looks that cop type character.
Yeah, well, and then Walter Matthau, who has a few lines in the movie, but they're all just the names of somebody as he takes shots in the local bar. And I don't know what his reasoning for, I guess because he's basically what amounts to a cameo in this movie.
Yeah.
He's not billed as Walter Matthau. Did you guys see what he's billed as?
He's
in the
billed as
credits?
some long.
I had to write it down. Where did I put it?
I want you to say.
Walter Matuschanskayasky.
So
Boom.
I was reading on IMDb that he asked to be billed by his real name, even though that's not
Really?
his real name. Yeah.
Okay. And
As
then
a favor to the director.
And they were like, no.
No, they said yes, and that's why it's billed that way.
Oh, I didn't think
They
that.
told the director that's his real name.
Oh my God.
So that is that his real name?
I don't
No.
think that is his real name. Yeah.
It's not, no.
Okay, so he was just trolling the
Yes,
director.
he was trolling.
Well, that's pretty funny.
And then we left out. There's a stunt. There's like a stunt.
Shaft. It's Richard Roundtree.
It is,
and
and
he's
he's
the
like
evil
a
Knievel guy.
Yeah, he's an evil Knievel guy, and I guess he's trying to get investors, and so he set up some random little course in the middle of nowhere.
It's so weird, and I assume that they put that in the movie because Evel Knievel was very big in the 70s, so they thought, who can we add to be in this movie that's like a cool character? And who's cooler than the original Shaft. Richard Roundtree. So they got Richard Roundtree. I'm talking about Richard Roundtree. But yeah, he's the Evel Knievel guy. He's got like a really shady-looking white dude with him. And the white guy's sister, played by Victoria Principal, who would later go on to play Pam in Dallas. That's probably what she's most well known for. But she's got like an afro.
She got an afro.
And I think she stole Shaft's clothes because she's got like the dark,
well, and she
like
got that
the leather pants and
that yellow shirt that they're trying to sell the merchandise by putting it on an attractive.
Her, yes.
Because the store clerk guy ogles her, and he give her like.
No, he doesn't ogle her.
Yeah, he does. He
like,
tries to rape her, I think, actually.
Spoiler.
Yeah, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
She doesn't have enough money, and they have these signs that say like credit's no
good
no
here. Credit.
And he's like sees her checking out, and he's like, your credit's fine here, lady. And then he gets the call.
He gets the call, and it's interesting. Like they have him as like the military type, and I think this is like this movie definitely takes place post Vietnam, but it kind of reminds me of Rambo in a little bit. That you have this guy who's in the military and he gets hazed and teased on by other people because they just.
Well, there is a kind of thinly veiled to his buddy, or not his buddies, but the guys that make fun of him think that he might be homosexual, and so they make fun of him because he has like bodybuilding posters and things on the wall, and so he gets very frustrated.
And he puts on a strange wig.
We need to discuss.
He does. So before we get into that, I want to make a quick aside into so the guy's name is Marjo Gortner.
And that should not be in the movie at all.
I will make a quick aside into the history of Marjo Gortner because I'm very familiar with Marjo, having seen a lot of shitty B movies and stuff like that. The last movie he made, by the way, was in 1995. He's still alive, but the last movie he made was in 1995. He was in Wild Bill. But before, when he was just a child, when he was like 4 years old, his parents were very, very religious, and they made him an ordained minister at the age of, I think, 4 years old. And his name is Marjo because it's a combination of Mary and Joseph from the Bible. Marjo became a little child preacher. And then he preached all the way up until his teens, but his parents absconded with a lot of the money that he made, and he made millions. They made a lot of money off of his preaching. Well, eventually he became kind of disillusioned. He made one final preaching kind of a revival circuit in the early 70s that he allowed people to film. They made a documentary of it called Marjo, named after him, and it won an Academy Award for the best documentary that year. And then after that, he quit all the preaching and basically turned his back on religion and started doing movies like Earthquake. But the funny thing, there's a little in-joke in the movie because, as you said, he runs a grocery store. There's some Hare Krishna outside the grocery store, and he goes over to George Kennedy's police character, and he's like, "Can't you do something with these guys? They're scaring my customers away." And George Kennedy goes, "What's the matter? You got something against religion?" That's a little in-joke because of Marjo's past. It all makes sense now.
Right over my head.
So he is also a National Guard reserve, as you said, and when the earthquake breaks out, because his hair is too long, even though it's pretty short, it's definitely not the length of mine or yours. But he's got like a little mini fro himself, but he has to cover it up with this hideous blonde wig. And when he got into the closet and all of a sudden he comes out and he's got the wig on, I just busted out laughing.
I mean, so there's a story reason for it, and the story reason is that
he says in the movie that the guys that hair's too long.
A lot of guys have them.
Yeah,
but like,
a lot of guys have them, right?
There has to be like, I mean, I don't know how you would even find this out. There has to be like a production because it's just like so weird.
Yeah, Kirby's convinced that he cut his hair or something.
Like maybe they shot the first scenes, like his hair was short, and then they were like, oh, we need pickups. His hair was so. I mean, it just it looks so random.
He might have cut the length of his hair, but his hair always looks like it does originally in that movie. Like if you see him in any other movie, it always looks like this little curly red fro.
His whole character was just random, and
I do like that when
didn't bring anything.
He's a total creep.
When he got the call to action, he was in the middle of a transaction. He's just like, peace.
Yeah, I'm out of here. Well, he hates his grocery store because he wants to open up a karate school. Remember?
There's a lot of money in karate.
He says, he's going to open up a karate school. So he's like, screw this grocery store. I don't care about this. This earthquake, because he's like, I hope that store burns to the ground or something like that.
He wants to start Foot Fist Way.
He does.
Well, I don't understand. I mean, what Adam was starting to say, I do not understand why he is so psycho. I mean, I understand his roommates or people who live in his building don't like him, but like. He's a psychopath, and he just goes from 0 to 10.
He
does.
He's a psychopath.
He shoots his.
He kills the guys that make fun of him. Ultimately,
and like none of the people underneath him, none of his subordinates in the military,
he's in charge,
seem to care or know that he's just like.
Well, but after a while, they're like, "Let's get out of here." That guy's cracked, and so they run away. Which
reminds me of Force Awakens too, where like Kylo Ren's having his hissy fit, and the stormtroopers walk by, and they're like,
"Oh yeah, better get out of here." But no, he first he just kind of is a peeping tom against the Victoria Principal character. He stands outside her window and watches her while she's changing. You don't remember that?
No. Do you remember that?
Yes.
I was there.
I don't remember that.
He's like, whoop,
I mean, and he's not even trying to be, kind of conspicuous. He's just like. While she's in there, and it's like a wonder. I'm like, how does she not see him? Because he's right behind her when she's looking in the mirror. You could see him in the reflection in the window, but she's just like changing her clothes or whatever. But then he comes to her door, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I can protect you, and I'm not here about the money, and a nice lady like you don't need to be walking around by yourself." And also, I mean, he's just a creep, just a total creep.
But, it's also just because it's interesting how if his people in his building are making fun of him because he has like the bodybuilder things on his wall. So it's like, then for him to just that's his whole issue. But then it's like he wants to like rape this chick. So it's like, it was just weird that like they make fun of him because of that. So it's like, is he doing this because he's crazy, or is he doing it to try and impress? I mean, it was just so weird. To me, it was completely random.
Yeah, his character is very odd.
Yeah, I didn't know much.
Yeah, creepy Marjo.
And then George Kennedy's character at the beginning of the film is obviously just an unhinged kind of cop. I mean, he's like running into car, when they're driving.
He shakes that one guy,
and then
he slugs that one dude.
He slugs the one guy, and then he causes the one guy to ruin Zsa Zsa Gabor's hedge. Yeah. He's like, who owns that hedge? It's Zsa Zsa Gabor. And I'm like, man, blast from the past there. That means nothing to like today's audiences. They're like, who? Like, I don't care about that. But obviously he's crazy, but he kind of redeems himself later in the movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He becomes a little bit more stable and actually although he's still pretty angry.
Yeah.
Like he tries to steal Charlton Heston's souped up little Blazer that he drives, which dig that car phone that he's got. He's got like the rotary phone.
It was like,
phone.
It was like a real handset. It wasn't,
yes.
It was interesting.
I love that. But I loved his little fancy Blazer.
He's like, you're an ambulance now.
Yeah, and what does he say? He's like, he's like, this is like a souped up.
Oh, yeah, souped up.
It's got like seven different reverse gears. Three reverse gears, or something like that. He's like, all right, well, you're an ambulance driver now. Yeah. I thought that was pretty funny. Also, Marjo Gortner, I wrote this down here. I think I've covered just about all this stuff in our discussion.
Covered everything, Marjo.
I have. But after a while, he starts to talk in bits and parts, like in almost like a Southern kind of accent. At one point, he's like, I want these people out of here, and I mean everybody. And I was like, he wasn't talking like that early in the movie. All of a sudden, he's like a Southern guy. And I don't know if that's like his Southern preaching roots coming out all of a sudden. Like when he gets excited, suddenly he starts talking. But he's like Foghorn Leghorn or something, like all of a sudden, like, everybody needs to get out of here. Yeah. I don't know. It was weird.
It was very weird.
Very strange.
So something that I also, how there was just so unresolved that the guy pushes the button on the elevator and then water, like at the dam, and then water and a body washes out. He's like, oh my God. And no one seems alarmed. They're like, why are you so worried? The water hasn't risen. Hey. People die all the time. And it's just like, the elevator was full of water and a body came out and no one cares.
Yeah.
And this guy's just like the whole time like, don't tell me, I know, his supervisor shows up.
Yeah, but I think that's just another one of those. You've got the characters that they don't believe and they don't care, and they seem.
But with today's day and age, yeah, I kind of see it now.
Yeah, it's not as unrealistic as you might think, right?
Not anymore. This has changed a lot.
Because you got the one young kid who predicts that there's going to be like big earthquakes, and he kind of takes it to his higher ups, and they're like, I don't know about this, or whatever. And then of course some of it is not only do they kind of not necessarily believe him as much, or they think that his data might be wrong, but also we can't alarm all these people, and we don't want. So yeah, it does kind of definitely draw some parallels to today's. But let's talk about the effects of the movie. So. First of all, we've said a lot about the movie. We haven't really said whether or not we enjoyed it overall. I enjoy it for the fun, absolutely ridiculously cheesy movie that it is. And I love to death all of the practical kind of effects, even when they look stupid. And I didn't see the cartoon blood this time, but...
And I'm in the same boat as you, and that was my question, is like, when this movie came out in the 70s, were people super serious about it, and were they like, worried about the characters, and like, did they take it, at face value, or were they like us where we're just like the most fun part is just the damage and it's just hilarious.
And there's a lot of damage.
Yeah, and it's just like we read it more as comedy than serious. So that's kind of my question is I don't know how people write in the 70s, but for me it's just a fun, enjoyable, hilarious movie.
Well, I think we all three of us tend to watch these movies and get laughs out of them, maybe unintentionally, but I still find it very enjoyable. Even when it's funny like that, I would assume they probably took it maybe a bit more seriously back in the 70s, but I think people that aren't me now probably take this more seriously, but it's just because I tend to guffaw at things like this and laugh and chuckle. Look at that guy falling out of the building. It's hilarious or whatever.
I think this is like almost a drive-in movie theater type of.
Absolutely.
It's like a.
Absolutely.
I mean, so I think that it's they took it seriously as far as like a production, but it absolutely is like because it's just ridiculous. Like
it's ridiculous.
One of the things that I love is how an earthquake happens, and and this movie has hundreds of ways you can die. You can die from all kinds of things. It's like a flood, and then you're electrocuted. But then at the same time, you could maybe not fall off your motorcycle while doing a trick. I mean, anything could happen. Yeah. And I enjoyed the multiple ways people could pass away.
Well, and when they're just coming like down the stairs and like part of the stairwell is gone, some of those people just like because they're going so fast, they just get knocked off the ledge, and fall off, and you're just like, oh my god, that's crazy. And then they've got to lower people down in their little
chair,
pantyhose chair, and whatever that they've got.
And people who were on not near a window seemed to just walk. And then realize, I'm falling out the window.
My favorite death, I think, in the movie is the one guy goes, turn off the gas! And the guy runs into the house. Boom! He just ran in the house. Apparently he didn't turn off the gas quick enough. And it's just the house explodes.
Didn't make it.
I think Charlton Heston's father-in-law, he does a lot for an old man.
Oh yeah,
yeah. He does everything to save everyone out of the building.
He does.
And there's this young I don't want strapping. I don't know if this is the right word, but there's this other young executive right next to him who's doing nothing.
Yeah,
and he's just
he's a tough guy.
He's opening elevators and stuff. This one guy just sitting there next to him do that. Yep. Just
And if the little boy didn't have a spinal injury due to his first injury in the movie. He does by now because they were just throwing that stretcher every which way when they were.
They moved it up.
They moved it up. I mean, he's just got to be if he has feeling in his legs, I'd be amazed.
So they have this ridiculous earthquake which destroys all these buildings and everything else, and they move the wounded and the people that are getting treatment and possibly dying down into this kind of hospital area that they set up for triage or whatever, and then that gets demolished from another an aftershock.
And that building was known to be unbreakable, which I think Heston had something to do with it because he talks about being embarrassed by it.
Yeah, he does he mentions that in the movie. He's like,
you guys are remembering this movie better than I remember.
We're putting up all the. Well, I think it helps now that I've seen it effectively twice. But he's like, he's ashamed that they've built all these skyscrapers. When nothing can combat nature. Basically, nature it can get us all. It doesn't matter what we build or whatever. It doesn't matter how conceited man is. He makes some kind of statement like that. So.
And then I don't know why Charlton Heston makes the cop go into the time where they have to jackhammer. Mm-hmm. It's there's 20 people and he's like, I know who's going with me. And the cop's like,
Because the other guys saying they won't go.
And plus, the cop made him drive him over there.
The other guys are like, that tunnel could collapse in any second. We ain't going down there. And George Kennedy's the only guy that's kind of showed a spine up to that point. And so he's like, I know who's going with me. He is. And George Kennedy's like, yeah, okay.
Oh, wait, hold on. We didn't mention that at the bar, when the earthquake happens, the guy who falls and then gets a massive pot of boiling water falls.
Oh,
yes.
That might be my favorite.
I think that's my favorite one.
There was a commercial that was talking about kitchen safety a long time ago, which had something similar happen. Somebody trips or something and a pot of boiling water falls. And it was like, again, it was like a PSA about, or kitchen safety. It was terrifying. And I was reminded of that when I watched this movie.
Reminds me of Sleepaway Camp.
Yeah, Sleepaway Camp. Same thing happens in that movie. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
All right. I think we're running long on Earthquake. So, final words on Earthquake, Kirby.
I mean, I love this movie. I love Charlton Heston. I think the ending's weird.
There's no ending.
Yeah. I mean,
Well, the ending is very bleak.
Yeah, and I think
it's like we've got to rebuild now.
I love this movie. I do.
She loves this movie.
I love this movie.
And she thinks there's a lot of comparisons to the movie Speed.
Yeah, there's a lot of like shot for shot, like with the elevator scene, like the way they cut things. A lot of like I can just see the kind of the similarities as far as like with the elevator scene, and then when they were lowering people, I was like, oh, picked up on that.
Mm.
And then also an Independence Day reference.
Probably.
With the car they were driving. Maybe I just see too many action movies, but.
What about you? Final words on Earthquake.
So the Sense Surround system was created for this movie, and it was basically a special installation of speakers and amplifiers to give the audience a feeling of being in an earthquake and to have your chest and everything
so it's
rumble.
The early version of the D-Box.
Yeah, and well, it was done because the speaker systems of the time, they couldn't give you the full kind of radius of what the ear could hear, so they put that in to give it that special low rumble. But it was only used for Earthquake, and it was used for just a few movies after this: Midway, a movie called Roller Coaster, and like some Battlestar Galactica stuff. Which, incidentally, Battlestar Galactica also had Lauren Green.
Huh.
And then the only other thing I was going to say, it had 4 nominations. At the Academy Awards that year.
Really?
It won for Best Sound only, but it did win a Special Achievement Award for its visual effects.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
First time seeing this movie, I thought it was a lot of fun. It's hilarious. Probably a little long. I feel like I'm going to say that about every movie we talk about. But I think it was a little long, but I think it was just really enjoyable. And, Kirby and I just sat back and just enjoyed ourselves and howled at everything that was going on screen. So if you haven't seen Earthquake, I would say definitely give it a watch. It's hilarious, whether intentional or not.
42% Rotten Tomatoes, 35% audience score. Pretty low.
Very low, yeah.
It should be higher.
Imagine be higher.
It's a lot more fun than that.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot more fun than 2012.
And my brother was chosen to be in the Earthquake ride when we were at Universal.
There you go.
He got a foam brick thrown on his head.
There you go.
So there was a ride at Universal made after this movie.
And we paid for them to throw things at my brother's head.
That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
So that was our review on Earthquake. If you've seen Earthquake and you feel any different, shoot us an email, realshame@gmail.com, or shoot us a viewer question, which we'll answer. Actually, I'm doing this a little bit early because we do viewer questions right now.
Oh,
so yeah, I jumped ahead.
We did.
So speaking of viewer questions, we have a viewer question that came in that shot us an email at realshame@gmail.com. And that viewer question is, have you ever left a movie? Have you ever left the theater while a movie is playing? Before the movie's over?
No.
What's a good way to phrase that?
Yeah. So have you ever walked out of a movie?
Yeah.
I guess. I have never walked out of a movie, and because I paid the money to see it. So come hell or high water, I'm going to watch that movie, even if it's terrible. Because if nothing else, I'll have a story to tell later about how terrible it was, and I don't want to feel like I wasted my money. Now, you and I have discussed, we've had things happen, like in the old days when they still use reels, and it wasn't all digital, where things broke or whatever. We can tackle that another time. But I definitely have stopped watching movies at home. Most recently, I could not get through The Beach Bum with Matthew McConaughey. I got through about 10 minutes of that, and it was so terrible. Well, it's a Harmony Korine movie, and I just don't think he makes very good stuff.
Yeah.
And there was no exception in this case. I thought it was awful, and I was like, and then there's definitely movies that I have tried to, or wish I would have turned off that I didn't turn off.
Yeah.
But have you ever walked out?
I used to want to complete every movie I saw.
Yeah.
And so like I would sit through a bunch of bad movies at home and just like suffer through it. But it was one of the podcasts I was listening to a few years ago. They were talking about like it's just not worth the time.
Yeah.
And then that just kind of flipped a switch in my head. So now like I don't have patience unless it's for this podcast to watch something I have no interest in, right? And we were talking about it before, but like a ghost story was like
I wish I would have turned that off.
it was grueling. And I only made it as far as the pie scene you told me about.
Yeah.
And as soon as I saw that, I was like, all right, I've seen enough of this movie. And the movie was just like, I was laughing at it. And it's not intentional, but I just was thinking of like I was thinking of hilarious things that Casey Affleck could be doing under the sheet.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm like, this would, like, I wish like Scary Movie would take it. Scary Movie producers, take this and make that your spoof, your next spoof.
But credit Adam and pay him.
Yeah, please. But yeah, I think it'd be hilarious, like him doing different things under the sheet or having different kinds of sheet. Like this is ripe for parody.
Well, and I want to see a scene where she eats not a whole pie. I mean, obviously it cuts it down or it time lapses it in some way, but she eats a whole pie. Then she's got like a big bucket of fried chicken that she goes through. Then she's got like all these different kinds. Like she eats like tons and tons of food, and it's just like
she can turn into like Violet
stuffed.
or like the person in Slither. Like she's just like grows. Like
Gross.
you nutty professor of, right? So the person just grows and grows.
Yeah.
Like that's her only job.
And the whole time he's just watching her with a sheet.
Yeah. The only job, she's just eating and eating and eating, and then she has cardiac arrest, and then someone new moves in. Right? Perfect. That's your act one, guys.
That's what Ghost Story should have been. I would have liked it a lot more. But I should have turned that movie off. But I did make it through the pie scene and beyond. And
I only remember walking out of one movie. There's a bunch of movies that I wanted to walk out of. One of them was the Christopher Nolan movie that we saw.
Dunkirk.
Dunkirk. About 10 minutes into that movie, I was over
ready
it.
to go.
Another movie. I remember Batman and Robin being the first movie where I was like, "This movie's terrible. I should leave." Like I saw it in theaters. I remember I was like front row,
it's terrible.
on like it was.
Fun. It's fun.
No, it's not.
It's
I
fun.
don't even think it's fun.
Not at that time. Now it is, but not at that time. It was like stadium seating, and I was still in like the front row, so I was at floor level. I remember seeing that, and I'm like watching the movie, and I'm in my head, I'm like, I should probably just leave. Like this movie's not worth it. But I stayed all the way through it. Another movie that was like that for me was
So which movie have you actually walked out?
Hold on. I'm getting to it. I'm building the suspense.
Oh, okay.
Building suspense. Another movie that I didn't walk out of, but I fell asleep during was Sky Captain of the World Tomorrow. And apparently I was snoring so loud that my friend had to wake me up, and I was so irritated about him waking me up, and I moved like 3 seats down because this was before you had assigned seats. So I moved 3 seats down and proceeded to go back to sleep. But the only movie I've walked out of, here we go, the suspense is built,
I'm ready.
is A Thin Red Line. I went to go see. We talked about my non-affinity for war movies. I'm not a big war movie buff, and I remember the trailers for that movie had all this huge cast of characters, right?
Oh yeah,
and
everybody.
None of them showed up till like the end of the movie, right? I mean, I feel like a lot of them, like George Clooney's character, is like the last 15 minutes. I mean, I remember him being
he
very
doesn't show up until the very end.
Right. So it's just like, I feel like the reason why I wanted to watch this was out the window. And I was just so over the movie that, and my friend, I was seeing with my friend that I got up and I just walked around the lobby for the last 45 minutes.
Take it.
I just could not take it. I was not, and I haven't seen it since. But
I can't say I blame you for that. I don't necessarily dislike or hate that film, but I can see why you would do that or how you would do that.
So that was not, and that was Terrence Malick, right?
Uh-huh.
And I don't think I've seen a single Terrence Malick movie. So I haven't seen.
Sometimes very hard to watch.
Yeah,
sometimes very long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kirby, have you ever walked out of a movie?
I've walked out of 2.
She's walked out of 2 movies, guys.
So I walked out, and most people disagree. First Night, or not First Night, with Heath Ledger. Knight's Tale.
That's a great movie. That's a great movie.
I was like,
what? That's a great movie.
Turning into jock jams.
She said Knight's Tale.
That's intentional.
I said I said First Night because I actually watched First Night.
Yeah,
but I'm talking about Knight's Tale. I left.
I love Chaucer in it. I love the music. I love the.
It could be because I was on a terrible date in high school.
You should watch it again.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah,
I just didn't.
I like the anachronistic kind of the songs and stuff. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
I just
I like that.
I feel like I don't know.
What's
Second
number 2?
one is it was a gangster movie that had Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
Gangster Squad?
Yeah, it's Gangster Squad.
So
Untouchables.
Yeah.
Gangster
I left
Squad.
out after I'd say 10. I mean, I gave it no chance.
I don't think I've seen that.
I don't think I've
like
seen it
maybe
either.
20 minutes. It was. And I was like, yeah, we're out.
I haven't seen Gangster Squad.
But,
All right, so 0, 1,
walked out of
2.
Yeah.
Um,
I did fall asleep during Contact. I know you
There-
mentioned a movie you fell
there you
asleep
go, yeah.
but only because it was late and I was really tired, not because I didn't like
I
it.
used to love to see movies at midnight, and there for a while I would see them, but I would after a while I started falling asleep. Like
I'm getting old.
I love Moon. This is embarrassing, but I love Moon. But and I was dying to see it, so I saw the first one I could at midnight, and I fell asleep during Moon.
Oh.
But I also fell asleep during Green Lantern. I've fallen asleep during a lot of movies, guys.
I think falling asleep during Green Lantern's okay.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, now we're going to wrap it up. So if you've fallen asleep during a movie or walked out of a movie, shoot us an email. Let us know about it. Or leave a comment below if you're watching us on YouTube. And that's realshame@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram @realshame. And, let us know how you're doing and all that kind of stuff. Follow us on social
We want to
media.
know how you are.
We want to know how you are. And,
Call every now and then.
yes, just, reach out. In this time, we just need to reach out and be friends. All right, guys. And we'll see you next week with another movie review. Thank you for tuning in, guys. See you next time.